Welcome to another episode of the Playing in the Sandbox podcast, where we are deeply committed to inspiring action and shifting perspectives in today's leaders, just like you. And today, I'm diving into a topic that I think probably some of you are going to have some twitching happening during the conversation, even just by the title alone, why it's important to be better, not perfect, in your everyday actions. And as you lead people, why is it important for you to challenge them to be better, not perfect? You know, so many times I have conversations with leaders that are frustrated with their underperforming team, but it comes from often, rooted in often, this unrealistic expectation of perfection, bottom line. So I say the goal ought to be better, not perfect. And today we're going to talk about the 4 reasons or the 4 tips for you to implement and apply with yourself and with others to increase that being better mindset, as opposed to locked on to everything must be perfect. And so I want you to take off your shoes, step into the sandbox, dig your toes in, grab your pen and paper. Let's get ready to dive in to this great topic about being better, not perfect, as a leader in the workplace. You're going to head on over to tammyjbond.com/podcast and download the action plan for this episode so that you can get the extra tips and tools that I've got in that tool for you to use in conversations with self and with others about how to be better, not perfect. So you all know that the pursuit of perfection can often lead to disappointment, stress, and anxiety. That's not rocket science. That's not a new thought. But why is it then that as leaders, we set this level of expectation with our people about this level of perfectionism that is truly unattainable? And it's important to remember that being perfect, in an essence, actually is an unattainable goal. Instead, the goal ought to be to strive for progress and improvement each day. You know, if you're a follower of and a voracious reader of information, you've seen a lot of thought leaders out there that are talking about being just 1% better. What does that 1% better look like? And you know, it's an important ideal to look at, not just for you, but as you're leading other people, because you might have people on your team that have an unrealistic expectation of what perfection is for them, and that perfection is the only expectation that they ought to have. And the reality is, they're setting themselves up for failure and burnout. They're setting the team up for failure. They're setting you as a leader up for a lot of frustration. And so for you as a leader to be able to identify that in self and others when we've had these unattainable goals of perfection, and how do we navigate that, is really key. And I think the 4 tips today are going to help you to actually manage that dialogue and that conversation with yourself and with others. Because while the goal really is to be better, not perfect, without a strategy, it's just a thought and an idea. So today I want to dive into that strategy with you. And you might be saying, so Tam, why should the goal be to be better, not perfect? Why is perfect not an option? Well, funny, because if you've been around me any length of time, you've heard me say, don't should all over yourself, right? And this one, well, it really is an intentional should. I'm using it very, well, intentionally, as the word says. I could reword it to say it's best to have the goal to be better, not perfect. However, I think the should gets your attention. And we're going to cover these 4 ways right now that you can implement every day with yourself on why or how to be better, not perfect. But let's talk about a little bit more about perfectionism. You see, perfection is an ideal that is often impossible to achieve. And it can create unrealistic expectations in ourselves and in others that are difficult to meet, leading to frustration and disappointment, leading to a depression that I've seen people come over. And I've seen some of the greatest breakdowns in communication because this ideal of perfectionism isn't being met for the people that have it, but the others that don't share in that, well, they're thinking, the goal isn't to be better. It's really to make sure we're hitting our numbers, we're hitting our targets, we're hitting our goals, and our team is intact, and we're nurturing and taking care of those relationships. But for the perfectionistic mindset in the person that's saying, no, we had these errors. How many times have you actually been in a team meeting and you've heard people only talk about the negative? Only talk about the things that aren't working, only talk about the frustrations that they have with the things that are failing. Instead of, as you know, I say, start every meeting with a celebration to get people thinking in what's possible and get them into that creative mindset that is so important. But I also say, as you're going through those, that celebration aspect of it, it's okay to point out the things that we're missing the mark on, but we don't dwell there. We come up with a plan quickly to course correct it. So we're improving versus being stuck and dwelling in what didn't work. That's where that perfectionistic mindset also gets really troubled, if you will. They get troubled because they can't connect the dots between where we are to where we want to be. And the fail points in between are so frustrating. They limit them and they impact their communication. And I've just had this happen in recent weeks with a team that was really locked into what we're not doing and how come it's not perfect and it should be perfect. And they really were in a mode of shooting all over themselves. And that's where they got stuck. But when we took it out of, well, who said it needs to be perfect? And what happens if we don't hit the target? And what happens if we're not perfect every single time? What happens when we fail? What happens when we're late? What happens when we just kept inserting that question? What happens when? And what's interesting about that in that dialogue and in that moment, and when people would take it to the large whiteboard or to the flip charts on the wall and would map out the what happens, what's the consequence, what's the outcome for not being perfect? Well, there are some professions, I will tell you this. We all can list off the professions that if perfect is not the goal, right? If perfect is not the goal, then there are people that will not make it through surgery. There are planes that will not make it to their destinations. There are. But you see, there are, with those specifics, there are markers that they have in place on what to do at every step of the engagement. You can have that same level of checkpoints, right, with your team and with yourself as well. So you're striving to be better, you're striving to keep moving forward. What happens in the perfectionism mindset is we lock on to it's only this way or that way, right? My way or the highway. It's either up or it's down. It's black or white, right or wrong. And when we are that legalistic in that thinking, we fail. We fail to see the creative opportunities for improvement. We fail to see the creative voices or hear the creative voices that our team members are bringing. So when we get so focused on being perfect, we lose the opportunity to actually be better every day. You see, you can create a growth mindset that allows you to turn mistakes to turn from mistakes and challenges and turn those into opportunities for growth for the future success. And it can lead to greater success and happiness in the long run when we actually are focused on being better. And you've heard me actually, I think you've heard me say it before. If not, surprise, it's your first time. I believe in doing after action reviews. I think AARs are super important with a team engagement or with a project engagement. I have that with my team after every time we go in and facilitate with a leadership team. After every coaching engagement, I have it with my executive assistant where we're going through, okay, how was today? What worked? What do we need different for tomorrow? And I have those brief check-ins so that we can be learning at every stage instead of getting stuck on or get into this pattern of, well, we're just going to trudge through and get it done, but not take the opportunity to learn. Learning opportunities, some of the best learning opportunities come from our failures, friends. But if we're only focused on the perfection, we're not focused on getting better, we're missing the learning opportunity. And as a leader of a team, here's how I want to encourage you to apply this. If you have a member of your team that's not measuring up to your standard, if you have a member of your team that's not hitting the mark for you in the way that you need them and want them to, producing at the level of expectation that you've set, right? You've divulged to them, you've outlined to them what their responsibility is, and you're accountable to see that they achieve it, right? That's great. Here's the thing. You have an opportunity to also review with them frequently what they're learning on the process so that they can continually improve. Because when people just get in that lane of this is just the way it always is, and they build ridges up, right? They're building walls up around them and they're not seeing the opportunity. And that's where stagnation comes in the workplace. So if you have somebody that's stagnant, that's not growing, then I want to have the conversation with them on what their idea is of perfectionism versus being better. Are they in a fixed mindset, locked onto this is always how it is, ought to, should, should nots, those kinds of things, never, always, right? They paint everything with one color paintbrush. You have a team member that's locked into that. They're missing the creative opportunities to expand and grow themselves and the team and the organization. And that's where you get to come in as the leader and have that conversation about the difference between being better versus being perfect. If you've set the expectation, friend, that everyone should be perfect on your team and that there is no room for error, then I would encourage you to look at this in a different way as well and to have a conversation. Well, why is that? What's that rooted in? What's that doing for me? What's it producing for me? What's it holding me back from? But what's it holding my team back from? What might it be limiting us from? Are we hitting our numbers? If not, is it because you're only striving for perfection, or is it because in so striving for perfection, listen, in so striving for perfection, you're actually missing the growth opportunity to be better, ultimately taking you beyond the goal that you even set for yourself. You see, again, when we're rigid, we get locked onto it's only this way, it cannot be any other way. When we're in a growth mindseted way, right? When we're thinking of what's possible, if not this, then what, right? If I don't want this outcome, then what outcome do I want? And how am I going to go get that? Or what did I miss in the meantime? That's being better each day. Those are the conversations that you get to have with your team members. So I want to dive in real quick and in a hurry into the 4 tips on how to be better every single day. And it starts with number 1, setting realistic goals. So often I will go in and have conversations with people that I hear their goals. And if they have goals, because a lot of times, sadly, I've been with teams that don't have goals. But if they have goals, are they realistic? Do they know what realistic goals are and how they're attainable, and with a timeline and all of the things to, yes, a SMART goal is important, but it's also about having buy-in from the entire team to see that we actually want and can achieve these goals. So setting realistic goals can help you focus your energy on the achievable targets. You can focus your energy with your team on their achievable targets. They're the action, right? They're in action, the doers. You're helping to focus the energy on the achievable targets. It's important to break down larger goals into smaller ones. We know that. It's more manageable steps, right? We've all heard the different phraseology around how to manage smaller goals, right? So that it leads into and builds into the larger. And it allows you to see the progress and build momentum. And a lot of times I see that when teams are struggling, they're struggling because they've lost momentum, because they don't have that same clear and compelling I guess goal toward, or call to action toward, right? That what that momentum is, and they start to lose their path, right? It's your opportunity to help build momentum with your team, setting those achievable targets. And by setting achievable goals and targets, you can build confidence and motivation, which can help you continue to improve over time for yourself and for your team. So set realistic goals and make sure in the process, strong word, yes, my request, my invitation is that in the process of setting realistic goals, that you also make certain that your team buys into the goals and they can see themselves at the finish line with the goal, and have them tell you what that finish line looks like and how long it will take them to get there. If they say it's going to take 3 weeks and you need it done in 2, then you renegotiate why the 2 is so important to get done by, and then tell them you're there with them to help them get there. That's achieving, or that's managing the energy and the focus, right, for the achievable targets and goals. All right, so set those realistic goals. And number 2, Take an opportunity to learn from mistakes. Learn from your mistakes. Let the team learn from their mistakes. That's why I said those after action reviews, those AARs that you can have for 30 minutes after a project completion or after an activity or an event. Take the time to say what worked, what do we want to do more of, what do we want to do less of, what didn't work, and what are we going to do different the next time, right? The next time is so powerful to reframe it so we don't stay stuck in the doom and gloom of I failed or it didn't work, to, well, we're learning and we're going to the next time, because what's important is what we're moving toward, right? We're going toward that. We're being better each day, not perfect. We're being better to make improvements. And when we learn from mistakes, understanding that they're a natural part of the learning process, and that it's important to view mistakes as opportunities to learn and grow rather than failures. When you're speaking that as the leader over your team, you're building up the efficacy of the way that the team members can see themselves successful on your team following you, right? By reflecting only on mistakes and analyzing what went wrong, yes, we can identify the areas of improvement, and that's important, but we don't want to stay there too long, because when we're only focused on what didn't work and what went wrong, we're then dwelling in the negative, not turning it into a learning opportunity to make us better. So learn from the mistakes. Can also help you to make adjustments and avoid similar mistakes in the future, right? It helps you to course correct. And even as a mistake happens, having the freedom as a team member to go to the leader and say, hey, this is what happened. What you're going to find is this. They're going to come to you and say, this is what happened, and here's what I'm doing about it, or here's what I'm changing about it for the future. And they're going to be proactive with you versus you having to go pull it out of them when you've created a safe environment for mistakes, because you've turned them into learning opportunities to be better versus a fail point because they're not perfect. There's a really clear line in that distinction there. And I want to make sure that you got that clear delineation between learning from mistakes for growth and harboring mistakes for failure. Okay. Very big difference there. Number 3, prioritize self-care. Now, years ago, like kind of a long time ago, actually, I wrote 52 exquisite self-care tips for professional women. Yes, men like them too. It was just the demographic back in the day that I was marketing this tool to. And it came with a journal and this great little book and all these tips on self-care. And people would say, hey, come and speak to our organization on self-care and why is it important? Well, self-care is essential for physical and mental and emotional well-being for each individual everywhere. And prioritizing self-care, I would often say, can help not just recharge and refocus your energy, but it helps to reframe our mindset for what's possible. And it helps reframe the current present circumstances that we're facing into something so much greater when we're taking the time to do the activities like exercise, like meditation, spending time in nature, journaling. I cannot say enough good things about journaling daily. And by taking care of yourself, I would tell people, whatever fuels you, go do that. Take care of nurturing yourself, because if you're in the business of taking care of other people, which every human being is in the business of taking care of other people, you can't do that well and effectively without taking care of yourself first. So self-care, also really important, can help you manage stress and increase your overall productivity. I cannot stress number 3 enough about prioritizing self-care when it comes to being better versus perfect each and every day, because we get better the stronger we get emotionally and mentally, in our heart level, and our health, our physical well-being. We get better every single day as a leader, as a human being. And number 4, embrace a growth mindset. Now, I know there's been so much great work done on growth mindset, and I'm not going to dwell on this. I want to say this though, because we all know a growth mindset is important. Growth versus fixed, right? Growth, I attract abundance to me. Fixed, I stay in what I know and I don't go outside the lines, right? A growth mindset is the belief that you can improve and develop new skills with effort and perseverance. And by embracing a growth mindset, you can view challenges and setbacks as opportunities for growth. Remember, that's what we've been talking about. All of this about being better, not perfect. It's about embracing the opportunities that the setbacks actually present to you as a growth opportunity. And it can help you stay motivated and focus on continuous improvement, because we're always looking to the what's better and how do we improve it. Sometimes it is a if it ain't broke, don't fix it place to dwell for a moment. I agree with that. However, I know that for your people on your team, they're wanting to look at how they can improve. And the most people on teams today are mirroring what the leader is putting off, right? So if you are someone that, again, like I said earlier, is only focused on perfection, you're going to have people that are going to fail you continuously. You're probably going to have a really high rate of turnover as well. And you're going to have a lot of people feeling broke, rested, and disgusted in the work environment that you've created, because they're not able to measure up to your level of perfection that you've set, right? But having that growth mindset of what's possible, where are we growing to, what's the new skills that we're going to develop, just that perseverance that we want to develop so we can improve when we've made those mistakes or had those fail points. It's okay to acknowledge them. And then if not this, then what is the question that we ask? That's embracing a growth mindset. All right, so just to recap the simplicity of these 4 points: by setting realistic goals and learning from mistakes and prioritizing self-care and embracing a growth mindset, you will create a path to continuous improvement. And remember, progress is not always linear. It is not always linear. It's not a straight line, but every step forward counts. It might be ascending a staircase, and you might go through the season where you're descending, but we're always looking for that next opportunity to propel us forward. That's a growth mindset. That's being better. And that's prioritizing being better, not perfect. It's the action in the steps that matter most. Staying stagnant and ruminating on the why something didn't work out or go your way will keep your mind looking at the problem, and you will miss the solution more often than not. So set your sights, friend, on the small action steps that you can take daily. And if you're working at turning a team member around, I want to encourage you, go back to episode 10, because episode 10 was our start, stop, and continue feedback loop episode. And that will work perfectly with the 4 steps that you've been given here, the 4 tips that you've been given here about being better, not perfect. It's a great tool to use side by side as you're improving and moving forward with those opportunities, being better with your team each and every day, shifting our mindset to what isn't to what can be, right? From what isn't to what can be. And that's really our ultimate goal, because that keeps us growing and it keeps us moving. And remember, when we focus on what we want to have or do or become, we increase our odds of achieving it. And it may not be a fast moving pace, right? It may take some time. So set your sights on the end result and align your behaviors to the goal. You'll get there. You will be better each and every day. Hey, thank you so much for joining me in the sandbox today. My hope is that you are leaving with new tips, tools, and strategies on how to navigate your personal leadership and your team leadership and your next bold conversation. And hey, it would mean so much to me if you would share this episode with a friend or a colleague that you feel could really benefit from what we've shared here today. Maybe someone's struggling with perfectionism and you want to adjust their mindset. This probably could help. Third-party affirmations go a long way in today's world economy, and I would be honored if you shared the value that you gained from spending time in the sandbox today. And if you haven't done so already, head on over to YouTube and subscribe to our channel. The team and I have planned some fantastic content to continue to go up there, and I don't want you to miss out. Remember to head on to tammyjbond.com/podcast and click on today's episode to download your copy of the action plan from today's episode. We'll see you next time in the sandbox. Make it a great day.